Namaste, people. Welcome to Get Set Green Season 3. I'm your host, Pooja R V. In this podcast, we talk to founders, system shapers, and policymakers to understand what can be done for the environmental betterment. And in this episode of Climate Shapers and the System Shapers angle point of view, for this theme, today we have Philip, who has more than a decades of experience in addressing environmental consultancy and as well as a lot of experience in dealing with ESG and life cycle assessment in a broader umbrella of topics. And today we are more than happy to have him here to, let's say, demystify a lot of angles which can be, let's say, not so clear as of now. So, welcome to the show, Philip.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we are happy here, and I know it's evening for you, and it's night here in India. Yeah. Okay, with this enthusiasm, let's deep dive and see the, let's say, different facades of sustainability and how we can address them. And my first question would be why is measuring a company's carbon footprint still so difficult if we talk about organizational LCA, right? Can you please help us understand that? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are a number of reasons, and I think we need to distinguish here between the sort of scope 1 and 2 emissions, which are within an organization's control. So this is the direct emissions and the electricity consumption, and then the scope 3 emissions, which are all the value chain emissions associated with that organization's business. And even within scope 1 and 2, there is still a significant challenge in terms of just getting all the data. We work with complex, large multinational organizations that in some cases even struggle to identify all of their individual facilities dotted around the globe. So it then obviously becomes very difficult to pinpoint all the activity data associated with those facilities
Mhm.
when organizations have particularly sort of decentralized operations. They have different systems in different countries, and bringing all that data together can be quite challenging. And then when we talk about scope 3, which is involves engaging suppliers, engaging other stakeholders outside of the organization, then
Mhm.
those challenges are sort of magnified manyfold. So it is really, to a large extent, a data problem, just getting hold of the data.
Yeah. And that was my next question as well, because it can be overwhelming to collect such huge data for any organization. And not to mention that as we talk about scope 3, right, which also involves upstream and downstream data. It can be quite tedious to collect all the data. And even if we collect data, it can be, let's say, primary or secondary. So that does make a lot of difference when we evaluate the, let's say, the final outcome would vary, let's say, most significantly depending on whether it is primary or not. So that brings to my next question, Philip. I was trying to understand that because companies collect huge data for ESG angles, right? So why is turning that data into action still so challenging? Because now at least we have matured system in data collection. So the companies do have a way to collect the data, but why is it still difficult to process this?
Yeah. So again, I mean, you made a very important distinction between primary and secondary data. So the data quality is critical in terms of being able to really draw conclusions from that data beyond simply giving you a carbon value. Is understanding what drives that data and how you can then influence that. So, for example, if you talk about category is sort of your purchased goods and services
Category
emissions.
2.
That is a big part of most companies' carbon footprinting is the goods and services that they buy in. Typically, a lot of companies use spend data to estimate the carbon impact of that data.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is not very high quality data, and therefore the only way, for example, that your carbon footprint would reduce under that methodology of using spend-based data is if you spend less on your purchased goods and services. Now that
Mm-hmm.
is not necessarily realistic, and therefore you want to be able to actually have much more granular activity data. You want to understand from your suppliers how carbon intensive their products are, so that you can then look at either working with existing suppliers on improving their carbon footprint, or even looking at alternative suppliers that may have lower carbon products. So that's one area, but it's really about the granularity of the data and the detail, and also cutting through the large volume, as you say, of data that companies get, and looking at individual elements of that and identifying the key hotspots where they can make an intervention, where they're going to have significant impact.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned about having this, let's say, gap by using the spend data for the evaluation, right? Philip, do you, being in this industry for so long, in your experience, can you tell us like what can be most viable method if we have to be more accurate in calculating this category? Since you mentioned category 2, is there an alternative way to look at this?
So, in terms of moving away from spend-based data, then you have got a number of different options. Uh, One intermediate step, sort of one step improved from that, is to look at specific spend-based factors for the suppliers that you're working with. That gives you a slightly better picture, and that doesn't work in all cases. It works better for suppliers that are very specialized in one product or one product category, rather than very broad based suppliers that offer a wide range of products, where just a spend based metric doesn't work that well. The
Mm-hmm.
next level then of granularity would be to actually get product specific sort of LCA data for the products that they procure. So that is sort of the tiers of data quality that will give you um, not only more precise data to report, but then
Mm-hmm.
also better data to act upon.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. And how did your early work on carbon footprinting shape the thinking behind Novisto?
Yeah. So when um, I came on board with Novisto Carbon initially, it was a company called Minimum. We devised the platform, and then and recently we integrated into Novisto. But in terms of the carbon platform, it was really my previous work was in consultancy, doing footprinting, Excel based, as kind of most consultancies did then, and I think in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
cases still do. But there are really three areas that sort of drove the direction of the ethos behind the software solution that we implemented. One was in terms of data collection, as we've already talked about, is one thing, I mean, having a spreadsheet based approach, yes, it gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of you can take whatever data you have and you can squeeze it and manipulate it into your Excel model, but it's not particularly scalable. It is a very manual process. Um, so what we really wanted to achieve was to have flexibility in data collection, but that flexibility also to include as much automation as possible.
Mhm.
And so that is something that is achieved through APIs to existing systems, internally or externally, through AI recognition of PDF invoices, for example, as well as having surveys that either employees or suppliers can fill in within the tool, the platform, up to obviously submitting spreadsheets that they already have, that they already maintain internally, which already contains a lot of the information, so that they don't have to duplicate. So data collection was one area. The other area was just the calculation itself. Obviously, Excel spreadsheets again. One of the issues was that every client is slightly different, as we've discussed. The data that they supply is different, but then also the calculations that they require, etc. So although you might start with an Excel sort of a standard Excel model, it very quickly you have to make changes here and there, and it just becomes a monster and very difficult to trace and to follow through the logic. And that kind of gets then to the third point, which is the auditability of the data. One thing that we were very keen on from the start was that it should be a transparent system. So a lot of software can be quite black box. You put in the data, you get results out. You're not entirely sure what happened in between. And that does not really work when an auditor comes along and says, how have you got from this input data to these emissions?
Mhm.
The platform that we devised is very transparent in terms of showing exactly where the data has come from, how the data was transformed, and what the result is. So you have a very clear audit trail throughout.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned, right, using, let's say, the typical traditional Excel and also API and linking of various bridging this data, I would like to know, like, how can AI fundamentally change the environmental data evaluation for companies?
Yeah. So again, in the uh, various areas for data collection, I've already mentioned sort of scanning PDF invoices and
Uh, yeah.
getting different data sources. AI is getting very good at recognizing, obviously, the patterns, being able to pull out relevant data from a range of different data sources
Mm-hmm.
and putting it into a standardized format. So that's one area that's definitely helped. Another area that I think we are seeing sort of a lot of progress on, but it is still kind of in progress of getting there, is actually selection of emission factors.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
particularly, so in some areas, it's very straightforward. If you're talking about electricity, certainly national grid based, location based counting, then it's very simple to know which country the electricity was consumed and applying an emission factor. If you're talking about spend-based emission factors, it tends to be a lot more difficult because you might have 400 different um, sector emission factors for one country, and that sector categorization may be quite different from the categorization that a company uses internally to classify their spend. So you have to match the two. So matching the right emission factors is an area that is progressing. And then the third area is really in terms of the outputs. Is looking, well, for one thing, is spotting patterns and also spotting, therefore, any outliers, any anomalies that may be data errors or variations that need to be checked. So data quality checking, but also then in terms of taking it further and looking at opportunities for reduction, etc. The AI can actually start looking at the outputs in terms of the emissions and starting to come up with areas to investigate and suggestions of reduction opportunities.
Yeah, and maybe if I have to summarize this, it would be to enhance the interoperability of data, whether it is from PDF, Excel, or different formats. And if AI can play a key role in helping, let's say, analyzing the data and as well as converting into the desired format, would greatly enhance this. And also, in terms of the emission factor data building, if we can, let's say, have an inventory analysis done for apart from the really well established areas like electricity, if for other materials and few other angles, let's say in terms of other goods and products which are currently available in the market, those areas it would play a role. But I was also keen in understanding how this will play out for sustainability jobs in current date, right? Because as far as I am aware, when I was seeing the trend for last year, let's say 2025, and maybe even the year before, 2024, I was observing this keen, let's say, exponential trajectory in terms of the sustainability jobs and the demand for sustainability professionals. But let's say with the introduction of AI into this and also the changing dynamics in the area, right? So, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think well, AI can go so far, but it is sort of a tool. It provides assistance. It helps sustainability professionals to perform work more efficiently, quicker, etc. One of the things that I would say in terms of the underlying need and the demand for carbon footprinting, for organizational footprinting, at the moment, we're really only just scratching the surface in terms of the organizations that are engaging with this at a significant level. We're still seeing uh, inefficiencies in sort of data exchange within value chains, within supply chains. So there is a lot more potential that needs to be exploited, and we can't do that. We can't scale sufficiently with sustainability professionals alone doing the job as they have been in the past. Certainly the sort of Excel-based models just aren't going to work. They're not scalable. So AI can help with the scaling, but I think there is still a lot of demand for sustainability professionals to then use the insights created by AI in order to apply those and turn them into real action.
Yeah. And I see the point you are trying to address is also quite valid in terms of we can have the scalability, but if we have to derive the insights, maybe the probabilistic ones can still be, let's say, the way it can be determined by having the language learned models where it can give you the decision making point of view. But I do agree in terms of helping building the assistance and using it as a tool, would that is how maybe we can see in the coming future. And also, Philip, with the new regulations coming in like CSRD, CBAM, so how can companies avoid treating sustainability data as compliance exercises? And how can they actually use this to, let's say, in achieving their sustainability goals in the longer term?
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point because in many ways a lot of the regulation, sort of a lot of the reporting requirements, reporting regulation, um, is really about um, driving companies to adopt the accounting practices, the practices that will help them to improve their own performance. Now, a lot of companies will just treat this as a compliance exercise. They will provide the numbers and not look beyond that. But in terms of um, actually using the data, I think will provide companies with ultimately with a competitive advantage if they then go beyond the compliance and use it to make changes within their operations, within their value chain, because in a lot of cases there are significant financial incentives to do so. That there is a lot of potential upside in reducing emissions, as well as just the just the carbon savings. There are other benefits.
Yeah. And we are at the end of the session. And Philip, if you could share us your experience, you have spent more than already 12 plus years in the industry. And I believe this is one of the pivotal moment for sustainability data regulations, I would say. And from your experience, if you can share your insights on how this whole journey took place for you in your own words.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started on in carbon really back in 2007. So it's been a very long journey where there have been a lot of, I would say, false starts. There have been many times in that journey where it felt like we were at a turning point, at a sort of pivotal moment, and then things have sort of taken a step back. Clearly, I mean, one of the key moments, key drivers that has seen a lot of initiative, a lot of momentum was the Paris Agreement. There was a lot of activity following that, and a lot of companies certainly were putting in place plans and making reduction commitments. Um, and I think we are seeing in the last couple of years, we've seen a number of companies realizing that actually turning those commitments into action and delivering those targets is quite challenging.
Mm.
We're seeing obviously some rollback in regulations in different jurisdictions, which is possibly letting some companies, I guess, off the hook in a way. So you're right. We are at a crucial turning point where there are some very mixed messages, very conflicting messages, because As I say, from a regulatory point of view, things are a bit uncertain at the moment which way they're going to go. At the same time as actually we're seeing um, now more than ever the real impacts of climate change. I think people, certainly in Europe, with the ongoing heat waves, with the amount of wildfires we are seeing right now, um, a lot of people are waking up again to the real and present dangers of climate change. So it will be fascinating to see um, where we are going from here, because at the
Yeah.
moment we go in two very different directions.
Yeah, because it is less about future and more about present situation now. Gone are
Yeah,
the days where we can say that going ahead or in the coming years, the climate change would affect us. I think we are already being affected greatly and vastly by the changes which are happening around the globe. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And we are at the end of this, Philip. Thank you so much for your time and sharing us your journey in sustainability space. And it was quite insightful, I must say, for us to understand whether in terms of addressing the scope 3 categories evaluations and how the management of the data can be done in a quite efficient way, and the role of AI and also the sustainability jobs and the upcoming demand for this, I would say. And if this conversation felt useful to you, please do share it with somebody for whom this will be helpful. And also, if you have any suggestions for the show, please do send it to us. And until next episode, let's get set to get green. Bye.